Hello and welcome to this 6th day of MIAMAFV, where it's also an anime triple play where I talk about 3 anime that all have something in common. Today, Sci-Fi Westerns.
And it's going to be a triple play! 3 by 3 to the line! Banks in the three-pointer! An unassisted triple play!
It's red panty night when you decide to fight me, yeah?
Have you ever? No, I've never!
I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
I'm gay.
By all accounts, the sci-fi western is a genre that should not be. I mean, we're combining two diametrically opposed genres. The classical American western, which takes place out in the dusty frontier of the late 19th century, meets science fiction often set in some sort of far-flung future. But these are not the only aspects of these two genres. In American westerns, you often get this overarching theme of dispensing justice in a lawless land. A man with no purpose getting caught up in some sort of big momentous event way larger than anything he ever thought he would ever be a part of, and thereby finding some sort of meaning to his life. And in the case of sci-fi shows, it's often about exploration, world building, seeing what could be. And when you combine the themes of the American Western, along with the world building and exploration and the setting of a sci-fi show, boom, there you got it, Sci-Fi Western. Now you may think that these types of shows are pretty few and far between, and they are, but lucky for us, in the late 90s we got 3 right back to back to back. Let's go ahead and start with the first show that got adapted to animation, Outlaw Star. Outlaw Star focuses on our main guy, Gene Starwind, and his business associate, Jim Hawking. The two run basically a jack-of-all-trades outfit. You can hire them to do any sort of job. They do everything from moving furniture upstairs to maybe even putting a hit out on somebody, who knows. One day they get hired on as bodyguards to a woman named Hilda, for a price that's just too good to ignore. Before they know it, they're getting chased down by space pirates, and Hilda has actually stolen the world's most advanced spaceship, the XGP-15A2. But that's too hard to say in conversation, so Gene Starwind just calls it the Outlaw Star. And as it turns out, inside the suitcase Hilda had been carrying around this whole time, there is a bio-android named Melfina, who is the only person capable of interacting with the ship and getting it to take off. The unlikely crew sets off into the stars, and shenanigans ensue. With a little bit of poking and prodding, Gene finds out that the Outlaw Star was built to find the fabled treasure, the galactic ley line. So not only are we dealing with sci-fi and western elements here, having basically some bounty hunters who are hired on to hijack this super advanced spaceship, but now it's basically a pirate show too, trying to find some sort of hidden treasure out in the depths of space. Throughout the 24-episode runtime, Gene and Jim end up getting some extra crew members along the way. This Space Lord samurai chick, and some sort of Klingon knockoff cat girl. And all throughout their shenanigans trying to find the galactic ley line, they run into all sorts of people who either want to thwart their plans or beat them to the galactic ley line. It's these sort of bad guy of the week type of fights that are really the hallmark of this series. It is its bread and butter. And we get everything from spaceship on spaceship fights to simple fisticuffs down on the ground. While the space battles can be pretty intricate and really awesome to watch, the scuffles down on the ground have really good build-up, but unfortunately they just don't have a good payoff at all. A lot of these fist fights and gun fights are over in just a matter of seconds. And keep in mind, a lot of these things are built up over the course of an episode or two, only to have a brief spat of action and then it's just over. Although to be fair, I think this is more in keeping with the old school American Western, where you had the good guy and the bad guy, they meet up in the town square and they both draw and the good guy kills the bad guy in one shot. But really the main problem I have with the gunfights in this series is the fact that Gene has what he calls a caster. A caster is sort of like this magical MacGuffin Deus Ex Machina gun. It only takes certain types of shells, and those types of shells do different things. And they don't have any special names either. There's just like a number 11 shell, a number 19, a number 9, a number 2. And even though they do all sorts of different crazy things, well, wouldn't you know, Gene has just the right one at the right time, every time. The show is really good at building up a world. It's really good at building up tension. It's really good with its space battles. It's just the payoffs for some of those hand-to-hand fights and gunfights just aren't that good. And the last few episodes of the series just feel really, really rushed. Not to mention the second to last episode of the anime was a Hot Springs episode. Just filler. I suppose it's not the worst thing an anime could do, but it's pushing it. And not to mention, what makes the rushed ending leave even more of a sour taste in my mouth is the fact that we spent so much of the middle part of this run just kind of piddling about. Honestly, there's no need to rush everything in that final episode when we probably spent 8 or 10 episodes really not doing much of anything, just fighting the bad guy of the week. It could have been structured better, but overall, it's a pretty fun ride. It's got a great aesthetic, it does really good with its world building. You actually end up caring for Gene Starwin and his crew, plus the Outlaw Star has its own little AI construct separate from Melfina that's pretty fucking funny to listen to. Overall, I give it a strong 6, maybe a low 7. This sort of thing has been done better by other shows, and speaking of which, let's go ahead and get to the next leg of this anime triple play, Cowboy Bebop. Oh yeah, Cowboy Bebop, the show that will become a genre unto itself. No, seriously, that's one of the bumpers in the actual show. It made the prediction way before it ever took off. Cowboy Bebop is focused on our main character, Spike Spiegel, the former crime syndicate hotshot who goes and starts a bounty hunting operation with a former cop named Jet Black. Joining them are Faye Valentine, Ed, and Ein, the world's smartest corgi. In this mostly episodic series, we follow the crew of the Bebop as they go from job to job, trying to just barely break even. Actually, we have to go pretty deep into the series run before they even actually complete a job. Despite his devil-may-care attitude, Spike Spiegel actually has a really troubled past. While it is, again, an episodic series, we do get these little snippets, these little glimpses into Spike's past. As a matter of fact, a lot of people who have reviewed this show say that you can just skip ahead, watch episode 5 to see if you like it, and then just start over at episode 1. And I have to say, I kind of disagree. The first episode of Cowboy Bebop is really, really strong. You see a great dynamic between Jet Black and Spike Spiegel, you understand what Spike's all about, you get to see some brilliant fight choreography, and that's not to say that these things are not in episode 5, but episode 1 just gives you such a good, calm, steady rise to this awesome crescendo. I think that just jumping into episode 5 might be a little bit too much for some people, but that's just my take. As the series progresses throughout its 26 episode runtime, we start to get more and more snippets into Spike's past until a very clear picture comes up for us, and we understand why he left the crime syndicate to go join the Bebop. But honestly, if you're watching Cowboy Bebop just kind of casually, maybe an episode or 2 a day, this overarching storyline can kind of just fade into the background. You might really not notice that it's there. You kind of have to be paying attention to it. You got to be waiting for it. A lot of people really like that sort of subtlety, but for me, it's just a little bit too subtle. It can often just seem like background noise when you put it up against the bounty hunting job of the week sort of setup that we have going. It might sound like I'm being pretty harsh on it, but really all the shortcomings of Outlaw Star are fixed in this series. The fights are really well built up, they have great action, great choreography, and they actually have a good payoff. The space battles, what few there are even better, and that sort of slow, simmering, overarching story bubbling just underneath the surface gives it a lot of intrigue. And all of this builds up to what is perhaps the best final episode of any anime ever. I'm not going to go into any spoilers, but it's fucking awesome. If you've watched Bebop, you know what I'm talking about. On MyAnimeList.net, Cowboy Bebop gets just under a 9, and I think 9 is just about perfect for it. Really, the only problems I have with this series is just the fact that that overarching theme, which is a really, really good one, just isn't brought to the forefront enough. To the point where if you're not expecting it, it can just go right over your head. I really had to watch this show about 2 or 3 times before I really did appreciate it for what it was. And I think for a show to be truly great, you should recognize its greatness on the first run through. You might not be able to explain it, you might not be able to put it into words, but you know that what you just saw was awesome. With Cowboy Bebop in my first watch through, I didn't really get that. I knew it was good, I just didn't realize how good it was until I watched it the second and the third time. So enough with all that subtlety, let's have our last show be something that just hits you straight upside the face. Trigun. Trading off what was the best final episode of any anime ever, we get into what is, in my opinion, the best opening episode of any anime ever, and arguably the best opening scene as well. We are introduced right off the bat to Vash the Stampede, the $60 billion double dollar man, mankind's first localized human disaster. We follow Vash as he embarks on his many hijinks, traveling to all the far-flung towns in this desolate desert planet, on his mission to spread love and peace. You know that whole dispensing justice in a lawless land thing I mentioned earlier? And that's it right here. Throughout his adventure, he's tailed by Meryl and Millie, a couple of insurance agents that are tasked by their company to see if they can put an end or at least mitigate his path of destruction. Yeah, and you thought your job sucked. Despite his reputation, Vash is a pretty good-natured guy, and pretty much completely misunderstood by everybody who comes across him. Many of the atrocities attributed to him are just completely incorrect. In actuality, he has a very strict code of conduct, which includes never taking a human life, no matter the circumstances. While the show is very much episodic for its first half, in the second half things take a dark turn, and we get an overarching story played out. Vash's brother Knives takes a polar opposite view. Knives has no problem killing people to achieve his ends, and develops almost a neurotic obsession with making Vash see his way of things. The back half of the series is basically Knives trying to track down Vash with the gang known as the Gung Ho Guns. In this, we essentially get the kind of Outlaw Star bad guy of the week setup. Knives is basically mentally torturing Vash every single episode from here on out. This show gets hard to watch in some places, but trust me, it's worth it. The build-up is nice and steady, the crescendo is exactly what I wanted, and for once the payoff is totally worth it. Also, without giving you any spoilers, the anime concludes with the single greatest gunfight in anime history. This was one of the last old-school cel-animated anime to hit the airwaves. Actually, all the anime in this triple play are cel-animated. The gun battles are fantastic, well choreographed, action-packed, and inventive, which after watching as many gun porn anime as I have, that's a pretty high bit of praise from me. The atmosphere and world building is incredible, and this is definitely the most Western-focused anime on the list. Hell, most of the characters on this show dress like they belong on the set of Tombstone or something. And while we're kinda on the topic of gun porn, man, the gun porn in this show is good. Vash's custom nickel-plated 45 long Colt revolver is as iconic an anime weapon as they come. Oh, and the music is amazing. Outlaw Star and Cowboy Bebop had good music too, but in this, it's just fucking incredible. As a matter of fact, the Trigun OST is the only OST I have gone out of my way to buy. And while we put this anime triple play to bed, I just want to say, I have watched all three of these shows dubbed. I think that's the best way to watch them, honestly. All three of these shows were basically tailor-made for an American audience, or at least a Western audience. And it's really amazing that these shows got as big as they are in the West, because over in Japan, they flopped. I mean, Trigun was a total loss. Had it not been for Adult Swim and Toonami, we probably wouldn't even be talking about these shows. They would be very, very obscure. But thankfully, some people at Cartoon Network helped us out. So there, you have it. The anime triple play of sci-fi westerns. Outlaw Star is good, it's solid, but it definitely has some shortcomings. Cowboy Bebop is even better, probably the most subtle of the three in its storytelling. It definitely has the best OP. And Trigun, I just feel like Trigun brings everything together better than the other two. It almost seamlessly morphs from episodic into a serial type of show, whereas Cowboy Bebop kinda couldn't figure out what it wanted to be there for a little while. But all three of these shows are absolutely fantastic, and if you like any of these three more than the other two, I can't really argue against you. They're pretty good choices. Well, I just tagged this runner out. That does it for this anime triple play, and that concludes this 6th day of MIAMAFV. Catch you next time.